Every year, hundreds of agency owners take time out of their busy days to complete a survey. And that survey results in an incredibly rich data source that we share as BenchPress.
I love the idea that BenchPress is actually the thing we look forward to every year.
I share BenchPress with all of our clients every year.
BenchPress report brings in so many different voices and thoughts and backgrounds and cultures and all these different things into one space that you can access no matter who you are.
It's a bit like looking under the bonnet in other companies, and by virtue of filling in the questions and going through it in detail yourself, it also makes you quite conscious of what's going on internally in your own company.
It allows business owners to sleep well at night, to know what they need to prioritise, to know that often they're not alone.
It asks the questions that you might feel are too nosy for you to ask other people.
It really helped us understand where we sat at that moment and where we could push forward to, and more importantly, how we could push forward.
These BenchPress reports are only possible because of you brilliant folk taking part every year. If we didn't have any participants, we wouldn't get the amazing data that we have, and we wouldn't be able to share them with you.
The more you measure, the better performance that you will get. Check out the benchmarks in this year's report and see how you compare.
Hello and welcome to BenchPress 2023 live from London. You all enjoying the free bar? Good. Who'd have thought benchmarking would be so exciting? But it is. It is genuinely exciting to be here. Thanks to everyone who's come along to join us here in London, and thank you to everyone watching along at home on the live stream. You're in for a real treat. Explain what we have in store for you tonight. So this is an interactive event. You can join in on Twitter by tagging in at the Wow Company and using the hashtag BenchPressLive. My presentation will last for about 45 minutes, and then I'll be joined on stage by my colleague Rory Spence, and we're going to answer as many questions as you can. Now, this is the moment for you, if you're here in London, to take your phones out and type into your browser wowco.uk/questions. And if you're at home, please do the same, because you'll be able to submit questions throughout my presentation, and you'll also be able to see some of the questions that other people have asked and vote for your favourite ones. And Rory and I will do our best to answer as many as we can after the presentation. Now, I'm going to be taking you through an awful lot of information today, and a lot of the detail is going to be contained in the reports themselves. So if I do skim through something that you want to know more information about, the recording from tonight and the reports will be emailed to you before 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, so keep an eye on your inboxes. My journey here today started 19 years ago when myself and my business partner Paul set up the Wow Company. Now, those of you who are clients will know that for every single one of those 19 years, we've been about much more than just crunching the numbers. And as an accountancy practice that works with agencies between 8 and 80 staff, our job is to provide you with insights and best practice to help you build beautiful businesses. And that desire to provide you with insights and best practice led us to set up BenchPress in 2012. And that started off as a very humble, small benchmarking report. The first report in 2012 had just 3 benchmarks in it. It's amazing to think that we got away with it, but we did, and we started something. And what we started grew and grew and grew, and over the years it's grown to become the largest survey of independent agency owners in the UK. A massive thank you to everyone who has taken part over the years. Thanks to MailChimp & Co, we've gone beyond the UK borders, and this has now become an international, global piece of research. So those of you, well, a lot of you will be familiar with MailChimp, the brilliant email marketing software. But if you use MailChimp with your clients, then you should definitely check out MailChimp & Co. It's a brilliant community that will help upskill you in some of the things that you need to improve your results for your clients. It will provide a load of great event and content to help you manage your clients better. It's definitely worth checking out. And thanks to MailChimp & Co, our survey has been completed by over 1,500 people in 63 countries. So massive thanks to them. Here in the UK, we have so much data that we are publishing it over 3 reports. We have a lot of insights to share with you. And today, I'll be sharing insights from the first report, State of the Agency Nation. We'll be looking at the latest financial performance benchmarks, key trends, current challenges and priorities, and how agency owners spend their time. Then, on the 23rd of May, we'll be releasing pricing benchmarks. Not only will we be sharing the latest hourly rates, both blended rates and tiered rates for agencies, but we will also be revealing which method of pricing is the most profitable. Finally, in the summer, on the 18th of July, we'll be sharing profit and growth benchmarks. We'll be looking at profit in more detail than ever before and looking at the levers that you can pull to accelerate your growth. Now, every report that we'll be releasing, we'll be producing a version for agencies over $1 million and a version for agencies under $1 million. These benchmarks are very, very different, and it's important that you can compare yourself against your peers. I'll be sharing insights today from data from 614 UK agencies. And the first insight that I want to share with you, I think is a really important one. You know, for the first time ever, I can reveal that the most popular name for an agency owner globally is Dan. Do we have any Dans in tonight? Yes. Of course we do. Of course we do. Who would have thought when your parents named you that you were destined to be an agency owner? But you have not come here tonight to hear those sorts of benchmarks. This is what you're here for, to hear the state of the agency nation, to find out what is going on for agencies right now, and that is what I'll reveal. Now, if you want to find out what's going on for agencies right now, a really good place to start is our agency confidence indicator. This is a stat that we've been tracking since the dawn of time. And we ask a very simple question. We said, looking at the year ahead, how do you feel? Give a score out of 100 for the year ahead. Now, if you expect this year to be better than last year, give a score above 50. If you expect this year to be worse than last year, give a score below 50. And as I say, we've tracked it all the way back to 2012. This graph just contains the most recent data. And we're going to start in July 2020. Now, if you just cast your mind back to that point, we were emerging from the first lockdown. We were facing an uncertain future. And the score was 60. Actually, it was, when we ran the event in March, it was 35. It was as low as 35. So it was on the way up. And it bounced further up to 71 and 74. And around about the low 70s is where you would expect the confidence indicator to be in a typical year. When we ran the survey in January, it had dropped to 66 out of 100. And what's interesting is chatting to a lot of people tonight, I get the strong sense that actually if maybe we surveyed people now, that might be on the way up. I think January was a particularly challenging time for agencies, but I don't think we'd be hitting the heights of 70 or 74. And the reason for that is because 2022 was a challenging year. So let's have a look at what happened in 2022 for agencies. So, some headlines for you. The first headline that we have from 2022 is this one. Growth has slowed. Now, we've been tracking fee income and how it's changed for agencies for a little while. Let's have a look at how it changed in 2022. So, 10% saw their fee income reduce, somewhere between 1 and 25%. We then had 11% that stayed about the same. But look at this. We had 79% actually grew fee income, and 27% grew it by 26% or more. And if you're sat there thinking, well, that's not bad, you're absolutely right. That's not a bad place to be. It's not dissimilar numbers to which we saw last year. However, there are fewer fast-growing agencies. It's a lot harder to achieve that growth. And when you look at the number of agencies that grew by 26% or more, and go back to 2017, you will see the dip. So this is where we'd normally expect it to be, around about the mid-30s. The year before COVID came, we were already on the downturn. It was at 25%, then we had COVID, then we had the COVID bounce, and now we're at 27. So it's harder to grow than it was this time last year. And the other reason that agencies are feeling not quite as confident is because profit has reduced. Now, we all know how we make profit, right? And what that looks like. So we take the price that we charge for our services, and we take the cost of delivering those services, and we try and maximize that gap. Now, in any given year, both of these things are going to rise. And in May, I'll reveal exactly the rates that agencies are charging. But what I can reveal today is that this figure here, the cost for agencies, has risen at a really sharp rate. And when we look at agency inflation, and in particular how much agencies have increased salaries by in 2022, it's very, very clear why profit has shrunk. So, 4% managed to go through the whole of last year without increasing salaries. What I think is really impressive is that 72% managed to keep it beneath inflation, salary increases of under 10%. But look at this, we had 24% increasing salaries at a rate greater than inflation. Now, this situation is probably best illustrated by a conversation I had with an agency owner last year. It was probably this time last year. You may recognize this situation. And they said, you know, they had a team of 30. And they said, look, we're winning loads of work. And we're finding it really difficult to attract talent. And every time we do hire someone, they're on a whopping great big salary, which forces us to increase the salaries for everyone. And this agency owner said to me, he said, look, I'm just going to throw money at the problem. I'm going to throw money at the problem. We're growing so quick, I've just got to deal with it. Now, a lot of people threw money at that problem. And what they're now realizing is that if you are in this 24%, what we discovered was you have lower cash balances than those that were able to keep a lid on their agency inflation, the salaries of their team. So we saw this coming. You know, this time last year, do you remember the number one challenge? Everyone was talking about recruitment and retention, how hard that was. And I remember saying at the time, and I link in the report to a webinar that I did at a time that talked about the 7 ingredients of a winning employee value proposition. Because if you were relying on just salaries to recruit and retain great talent, you're going to struggle. And I'd encourage you to, when you get that report through tomorrow morning, click that link, look at those 7 ingredients and measure how you're performing against them. Because those 7 things will help you create a place where people love coming to work and want to stay for more than just the money. And that's really important. Next headline. Well, given that profit has reduced, it's no surprise that remuneration has fallen. Again, something we've been tracking for a little while. When you look at what agency owners earn, £1 million plus agency owners earn a great deal more than those under £1 million. No huge surprises there, but let's have a look at both stats. So if you're above £1 million agency owner, you can see at the top here, 7% earn less than 50 grand and 15% earn above 150. And we've got some in the middle. Now, a key tipping point for the £1 million plus agency owners is this 100 grand mark. And when you look at those that earned 100 grand or more, year on year, it has dropped from 53% to 46%. So no huge surprise there, given that profit has shrunk. We're working harder for less money. Same for the agencies under £1 million. When you look at their earnings, it's really hard to earn above 100 grand if you're a small agency. Only 8% managed it. The rest, almost a 50-50 split between those that earned over and under 50,000. And that's the benchmark that we looked at when we were assessing year-on-year performance. And again, that's down 58% to 52. So profit has squeezed, remuneration has taken a hit as well. And the other reason why maybe we got that score, that confidence score of 66, was this. Agency owners are worried. And when we look at how often agency owners feel worried or anxious about their business, this set of stats really shocked me. First of all, 1% said never. Now, I want... Come on. What are they having for breakfast? I think we can all agree that they're lying. A lot of people recognise the next one only when something major happens. 25% said at least once a month. But look at this. When you look at the data in detail, this is really quite troubling. So 21% said they feel worried or anxious about their business at least once a week. And 14% every single day. It's a really big deal. Have a look around you here. That's 1 in 7 of the people here tonight have felt worried or anxious about their business today, every single day. Now, whatever answer you gave to that question, I want to give you some encouragement that there's some answers coming up later, and indeed there's some more resources in the report that you can go to help you with this. But as a group of headlines, it's pretty bleak reading, isn't it? Growth slows, profit reduces, remuneration falls, agency owners are worried. It's a cheerful slide to start with, isn't it? Would you like some better news? Yeah. I thought so. So the good news is that the future is in our hands. There is so much that is out of our control, but there is so much that is within our control. And what I'll be talking to you about today is some of the things that we can all affect. In fact, specifically, 4 ways that we can thrive this year and beyond, all based on the data that we've uncovered from this year's report. So, let's take a look. So the first way to thrive was inspired by this question. Do you feel you have a healthy work-life balance? Now, at the top end, 5% said not at all, 6% said all of the time, the rest sort of split between some of the time and most of the time. What we did with this data was interesting. We split it here, and we had a closer look at this top group, those that said they either don't have a healthy work-life balance at all, or they only have it some of the time. What we discovered about this group was they were twice as likely to experience anxiety. Twice as likely to experience anxiety. We also looked at the hours that we all work. And we discovered this. Those that work 60 hours a week or more are 3 times more likely to feel anxious. 3 times more likely to feel anxious. So armed with those stats, the first way that we can thrive this year and beyond is to look after ourselves. It's absolutely imperative that we put this as a top priority, because we are the captains of our ship. We are the people that will lead our teams through this, and it's crucial that we're in the best shape possible to make the best decisions to navigate through whatever the world throws at us. So when it comes to looking after ourselves, there's how much time we work, but there's also ensuring that we have that balance. So how do we get more balance? Well, we thought we'd ask you folk, you lovely folk. In the survey, we asked for some tips, and you gave them to us. And there's a load in the report. There's a couple here that I thought I'd share with you. The first one, I really like this one. So I keep 3 in my diary a few times each week, and make sure I don't move it. Just to take care of all of the unexpected stuff that happens each day. And by the way, it shouldn't be unexpected, because it happens every day, right? Putting that time in the diary can make a big, big difference. I really like this one as well. I play a team sport, so it's a commitment. It forces me to have blocks of time when I cannot think about work. And again, it's that accountability, that commitment. How many times have we made excuses and stayed at our laptops? But actually, having that commitment dragging us away gives us the opportunity to think differently. I love this one too. I don't respond to clients on weekends or outside of the working day. Not only is that great for you, to help you retain balance, but it's a brilliant example to set for your team as well, to ensure that they have a healthy work-life balance. Now, let's say all of the answers are in the report. Some are universally applicable, some not so. We also had this one. I bought a boat. That worked for me. Now, I can envisage you all going back to your board meetings tomorrow and said, I went to this event organised by an accountancy firm, and Peter said I should buy a boat for my mental health. I didn't say that, but if it helps you, then good luck. You're welcome to use this. So whatever works for you, it's important that you do something. It's really important that we look after ourselves. As we learned through COVID, there's nothing heroic about getting burnt out. It does you no favours, it does your team no favours, it does your family no favours. Please look after yourself to navigate through whatever comes next. Something else that will help looking after yourself is the support that you have around you. I'm a firm believer, and it's been played out over what I've seen over the last 19 years working with agencies, that we're only as strong as the support network around us. And it's absolutely essential that we build that support network. And a great way that you can do that is by being part of the Agency Collective. This is a community that I co-founded a decade ago now. And when I founded it, I always knew we'd run great events, and I always knew we'd put on great content, and we've done both of those things over the last decade. But what I completely underestimated was the power of that peer support. When agency owners come together to support each other through the challenges, the ups and downs of agency life. And we have around about 500 members now in that community, a lot of you here tonight. And the support that you give each other is absolutely mind-blowing. I just want to say thank you for everything you've done for each other, not just through the last few years through COVID, but through all of the good times as well. You provided a huge support to the agency community, and I want to say a massive, massive thank you. If you're not a member, then please go and check it out. It's a key part of looking after yourself. The second way to thrive is inspired by this question. What is most important to you when it comes to your business? And when we asked this question in the survey, there were 4 answers. First one, creating an asset, building a business that could be sold in the future. Is that most important to you? Or perhaps it's purpose, building a business that has a positive impact on the world. Maybe it's time, being in control over how you spend your time. Or perhaps it's money, maximizing the amount that you earn. Now let's be frank, we'd all like lots of all of that stuff, please. But if you had to pick one, it's a really tough decision. But this is what agency owners said. Right at the top, 44% said creating asset was the most important thing to them. Then we had purpose, followed by time and money. Now, these were the answers for £1 million plus agencies. If you look at the smaller agencies, these top 3 are a little closer together. There's not a lot of difference between creating asset, purpose, and time. Money's at the bottom for all of us, which might explain why the gross profit percentage is so low. Probably need to work on that a little bit. Now, look, the thing I'd say about all of these is there's loads of links in the reports that take you off to various places that will help you get more of what you want. But I looked at that, and when I sat down with my business partner, Paul, and we looked at this, the thing that struck us both was the number of people focusing on building an asset. Now, that's a very worthy thing to do. Building a business that has the ability to work without you and has the potential to be sold in the future. There's lots of good things about that. But please don't do that at the expense of some of the other things that are important to you, particularly your time. You know, I've seen over the years agency owners tolerate situations that they really don't like now in the hope that there's this pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And for some of them there is. You know, we've had some of our clients sell out for millions and they've gone on to do something completely different. But that's really hard to do, to sell out for a meaningful amount of money. I spoke to an agency owner recently who, they were in a situation in January last year where they were on the verge of doing a deal with a VC-backed firm and that would make them multimillionaires and set them up for retirement. Thoroughly deserved. The war in Ukraine came along, the VC pulled out, and 12 months later they're facing a very different set of challenges. That story has been played out year after year after year. It requires so much to go right for you to build an asset that actually sells. So if that is your aim, and it is a worthy aim, please don't do it at the sacrifice of other things that are important to you. And whatever it is that you are focusing on, a great way for you to thrive is to be clear on your priorities, really understand them, and then create a written plan to achieve what is important to you. Now, later on in the year, I'll be sharing some of the levers that you can pull to increase your growth. And we ask lots of questions in there. I don't want to spoil what's coming, but I will reveal one benchmark that really stuck for me. Those that have a written plan, I mean a proper written plan, not just objectives, a proper written plan. We distinguish between those two things in the questions that we asked. Those that have a proper written plan to set out to achieve what's most important to them performed significantly better than those that didn't, or just had a set of objectives. So a really good thing for you to do on the train home or in your next board meeting or whenever you get the time is to think very clearly, what is important to me? How can I create a plan to make those things happen? What do I want to be different this year and beyond? And what do I need to change to make those things happen? Just hoping that it's going to happen isn't good enough. Please create that plan and make sure it achieves what's most important to you. Now, the third way to thrive is based on this question. Again, a question we ask every year. We ask, how much cash have you got in the bank? And we look at it in terms of months of overheads. And we define overheads as total business costs, including paying yourself. Now, these are the stats for £1 million plus agencies. And Actually, what you'll see in the report is something that we've done for the first time this year. On some of the graphs, to make it really, really clear, we've provided labels. So you can see whether you're down here. If you're down here in the one of the 10% that have 1 month or less, that literally hand to month in cash, you are at risk. There's absolutely no question about it. Up here, we've got a third in the 2 to 3 months of cash, okay. And then good and secure, we've got 27% with 4 to 5 months, and then 30% with 6 months plus of cash in the bank. And for smaller agencies, it's normal that smaller agencies are a little bit more hand to mouth. We've got 16% at risk, only 21% up here in secure. Now, cash is down year on year for agencies, but this position that we look at here is actually pretty good when you look at the last decade's worth of benchmarks. And the reason for that is that 61% of agencies took funding during the pandemic. 61% took funding during the pandemic. A lot didn't need it then, but a lot are very grateful to have it in their bank accounts right now. So agencies, in terms of capital, are not in a bad place, okay? Unless you're that 16% at risk. So when it comes to cash in the bank, if you want more cash in the bank, staring at your cash in the bank and thinking about your cash in the bank is not going to help you get more cash in the bank. You need to do the third thing to help you thrive this year, which is this: focus on profit. And the reason we focus on profit if we want more cash is because profit is the precursor to cash. And this has always been important, right? There's never not a time to run a profitable agency, to ensure that we are running profitable projects. It's always important, but it's especially important when we face the current set of economic circumstances that we all find ourselves in. So, this is a stat that you should all be looking at regularly. And when we looked at the metrics from this year, gross profit percentage had fallen. For £1 million plus agencies, it went from 44% in 2021 to 40% in 2022. Now that 4% drop might not sound like much, but it's significant. I'll explain why in a second. For the smaller agencies, agencies under £1 million, it dropped even further to 36%. Now, I've long advocated a target for this of 50% or more. And you'll see later on that there are lots of agencies achieving this. Now, I did an event a few weeks ago, and someone said to me, it's really hard to do 50%. And they're right. It is hard to do 50%. I know this because for the last 19 years, I've been running a service business. And when we started tracking our gross profit percentage, it was in the low 40s. And it took us the best part of 8 or 9 years to get up to 50. And I know how hard that is. This is not easy. But what I can tell you about that journey is it's at no point is it about squeezing resource. Right? You can do that for a year and you will get better results that year, but you will certainly not grow profitably and sustainably year on year. Please don't go down that route. The journey from 40 to 50 for us has been one of about hiring better people, delivering a better service, and crucially adding more value to clients. And every agency that I see break through that 50% gross profit barrier is doing all of those things. They have brilliant teams delivering high value work and an incredible client experience. They're doing one more thing, which I'll tell you about later, but those are some of the key ingredients for you. Please focus on edging that number up, especially when you look at the performance for gross profit percentage. So for agencies above £1 million, this is how we're doing. Again, let's add the commentary on. So you can see 35% are at risk. You do not want to be going into challenging economic times with a gross profit percentage of 30% or less. But up here, we've got 29% above that 50% mark. It's definitely possible. I think wherever you sit on this graph, I challenge you to think about how you can raise your game. For the smaller agencies, the tail is a little bit more challenging. So we have 46% at risk, right? They're going into a challenging period economically with a gross margin of 30% or less. But still, look on the plus side. We've got 27% up here achieving the 50% plus. This is definitely possible. Now, we aren't releasing the detailed profit and growth benchmarks until the summer. But when Rory and I looked at those numbers and saw the situation that a lot of agencies are facing right now, we had to do something about it. So we are running, or Rory's running, some Agency Bites sessions that are focused on profit. Now, if you're not familiar with Agency Bites, they're these brilliant events that bring agencies owners together. We provide some content to help you on a particular subject, but then we harness the power of the agency community and bring you together in small groups to share ideas to help you improve in a particular area. And Rory runs these events. They're so well attended. Those of you who've been to them before know how valuable they are. We wanted to do something before we release those reports in July. So in April, in fact, there's an email coming out on Monday with the dates, so you can pick one of 3 dates. Do join one of those, and we can start your journey to increasing your gross profit percentage right now. Now, the fourth way to thrive in 2023 and beyond has been inspired by this question we asked. So how do agency owners spend their time? It's a good question. Other than lovely events like this, what else do you get up to? Well, let's take a look. How £1 million plus agency owners spend their time. Let's start at the bottom here. So there was 5% of time that couldn't fit into one of the categories that we selected. We've got 11% on billable client work, 11% account management. Really good to see 14% being spent on strategy. Team management, 16%, sales and marketing, 20%. You will not believe what the top answer is for this. Like, I could not believe that you all admitted to this, but you are spending the most amount of your time on business administration. Seriously, 23% of your time on business administration. I'm pretty sure you did not go into business to do that. And if that's the case, I've got some ideas for how you can fix it. Now, for the smaller agencies, when we look at the whole picture, it's no surprise at the top they're spending a big chunk of time on billable client work, and then you can see the rest and you can look at the detail and report. Look, they haven't been bitten by the business administration bug. Look at you smug small agency owners out there, yeah. It's coming though, be warned. Right, so the fourth way that you can thrive this year is to do this. It's to spend your time wisely. Time is our most precious resource, and how we spend it, I think, clearly determines our success. So how will you spend your time for the remainder of this year? And crucially, I've got 2 questions for you. What do you want to do more of? What do you want to do more of in your business? Now, when we asked this question to the 614 agency owners, the answer was loud and clear: strategy. 4 out of 5 said they wanted to spend more time on strategy. And the question I have for you is simple. How can you spend more time on strategy? I had a lovely conversation with Sue, who's here with us tonight, Sue Keogh, and Sue used a lovely phrase when talking about the time that she spent on strategy. She said, I've been known I've needed to do this for years, and I decided to have an intervention with myself. And I said, what's that? That sounds interesting. She said, well, I took myself away for a whole day. I switched off all of my emails. I told my team I wasn't available, and I sat down and I thought. And I thought about all of the opportunities within the business, all the potential deals that I could bring in. And I mapped out my entire year. And the lovely phrase that Sue used was, she said, I'd honestly put a value of £200,000 on that one day. £200,000. If I look at the opportunities that I was able to identify, £200,000. Now, I know that Sue does that more often and hopefully doesn't need to intervene with herself quite so regularly. But my challenge to you is, how can you build that into your plans, your cycle, your rhythm of working? And how can it be the thing that doesn't move? Because if you think that strategy is going to be the thing that you do when you get a bit of spare time, you're kidding yourselves, right? We all know that the hustle and bustle of everyday agency life is not conducive to slotting strategy in. You need to put it in first, and ideally you need to do it with someone. Now, I'm very lucky I have a business partner, and we get together every Friday at midday, and tomorrow at midday, Paul and I will be together, and we will be, it looks like we're doing nothing. It looks like we're just going for a walk and chatting, but we are talking about strategy, and the decisions that we make, the alignment that we build has shaped our business. Now, I'm lucky we have that accountability. We have an amazing management team at WOW who have a monthly cadence and who have wildly important goals. So we have that accountability built in. If you are on your own, the question is, how do you build that accountability? Are there are there business mentors that you could use, other agency owners, coaches, even your accountant? We do this stuff too. We're really good at holding people to account. But finding ways where you can put in time for strategy and not move it will be critical to your success this year and beyond. Now, we also ask this question: what do you want to do less of? You will not be surprised by the answer. It's business admin. So, another question I have for you: what can you outsource to free up your time? What can you outsource to free up your time? There will be things that you are doing that you can pass on to people who will do much better than you. IT, HR, your finances. We brought on a client in the last month, and they're a £2 million agency, and at the point we brought them on, the owner was spending a day a week on their finances, fiddling around with invoicing and cash flow forecasting and messing about with stuff they didn't really need to do. We've completely freed them up from that, and they're spending that time far more wisely. And I would wager a lot of money that we'll be able to do your finances better than you can. So have a think about how you can bring in some experts, how you can outsource the stuff that you don't want to do. In summary, 4 ways for you to thrive this year based on the data that we have. First up, please look after yourself. It's the most important thing that you can do this year, is to look at the hours that you work, the balance that you get, and put in time for you, the things that enrich you, that make sure you get that balance. Be clear on your priorities and create that written plan to change what you want to change in your agency. And focus on profit. It's absolutely essential that in order to achieve whatever you want to achieve, you have to have a profitable and sustainable business. And I'm really pleased that we're running these agency bite sessions for you to start that journey. And finally, time, our most precious resource. If you can find ways to outsource what you don't want to do and find ways to ensure that you spend more time on strategy, those will be 2 great uses of your time. Now, before we go to questions, I have some thank yous, because tonight has been a 6-month project that has involved an awful lot of people that I just want to thank. So massive thank you to the WOW team, to Amy, to Jess, to Jen, to Rory, to Ewan, to Brett, to the team at Motive, to Adam, who's helped out, and to Blue Elephant as well. All of these people have contributed to today. I also want to thank everyone who's gone out of their way to spread the word about BenchPress. I am so, so grateful for you taking the time to do that. It really, really does make a difference. And finally, the biggest thanks goes to every single one of those 614 people who took the time to complete, let's be honest, a reasonably long survey, right? It takes 15 minutes of your time, sometimes longer, to dig out certain bits of information. But that time that you gave back in January has allowed me to stand before you today. Without you taking part, we have no BenchPress, we have no data, we don't have these insights. And I'm so grateful for everyone who took the time to do that. I'd love to get that up to a higher number next year, so thank you all in advance for your support. A final thought for you. The future is in our hands. We cannot affect and we cannot choose so many things in life. We can't choose what happens in the global economy. We can't choose what interest rates are going to be. But we can choose the mindset which will guide us through this year and what comes next. We can choose how we lead our teams over the next 12 months. And we can choose the actions that we're going to take. And I would love for you all to take action as a result of today. What would give me great joy is to know that when you get to the end of the year, you'll be able to look back on this moment and say, I have changed these things in my agency as a result of BenchPress, and they have made a positive difference. I know people take these reports and use them in their board meetings every month. They review their progress regularly. Please use this as a tool for your business, as a tool for good. I love hearing those stories of people who have done things differently and are reaping the rewards. Wherever you get to on your journey, please know this: we will be with you every step of the way, and I'm looking forward to seeing how you get on. Here's to a great 2023. Thank you.
Into the tasty bit. We've got the Q&A now. So thank you all of you who have submitted questions so far. We've got quite a few to get through already, and they're still coming in quite rapidly. So you can go online, you can vote them up, you can put thumbs up to get your question to the top of the list, and we'll try and get through as many as we can. If we don't get to your question tonight, I promise you, I will do everything I can to answer it, maybe tomorrow or next week. So you can hold me to that. But we've got a couple of questions to get us going. So we got a great question from Pete, who's in the room somewhere. Can't see him from here. But Pete asked a great question before tonight. Which number in 0 should I be checking every week?
Why is that funny?
Didn't expect that reaction. There he is.
So, look, I think it's a really, really good question. It got me thinking, because there's obviously lots of metrics that I love and that are important. And it reminded me, actually, there's 3 types of metrics, and those of you who heard me speak before will know that I talk about the lagging metrics, so those that are kind of like a history lesson. So looking at your accounts is a lagging indicator, isn't it? It tells you what has happened in the past. Cash in the bank is a lagging indicator. And then you've got your real-time indicators. It starts to get a bit more interesting. So you've got things like your live project profitability. So the projects you've got at the moment, how profitable they are. It's what's happening in real time. And then you've got your predictive measures. And these are measures that tell you what's going to happen in the future. And I'm a big fan of these because they show you challenges ahead of time, and they show you opportunities ahead of time. So actually, if you were going to pick one metric to look at, it would be a predictive measure, and it actually probably wouldn't be in 0. It would probably be in your CRM system, your sales CRM system, and it would be something that's going to be a big indicator of your future success. So, for example, it might say, for example, like website visits that you have might be an indicator of the number of downloads you get on a key white paper that you have, which might be an indicator of sales conversations, which would be a future indicator of proposals, which would be a future indicator of clients, which would be a future indicator of work done, invoices sent, and then finally cash in the bank. There's a lot that goes into cash in the bank. So if you were going to look at one stat each week, it would be an early indicator. And my personal favorite is sales conversations. So if you're going to track one thing weekly, sales conversations. If everyone here in this room goes away and makes sure they have at least X, and X will be different for each of you, number of sales conversations every single week, great things will happen. It's my personal favorite because this was the metric that we focused on when we set up WOW. The one metric Paul and I talked about was how many sales meetings we had this week. And our hope was we could get 3 a week with nothing. We had absolutely nothing, no clients, no clue, arguably. 3 meetings a week. We hoped that we could pick up 1 client from that, and we might finish the year with 50 clients, and we built from there. So that's why it's my favorite. So thanks for asking that question. What would yours be?
Yeah, my thought here when this question came in was it's going to differ for all of you, and it's really going to align with what your strategic focus is as the business right now. So if you are in a high growth phase of the business and that's what you're trying to do, you're trying to grow, then it is going to be a sales metric, and therefore what Pete said I 100% agree with. Equally though, if you're in a situation where actually you're consolidating and you're wanting to have a highly profitable year, and maybe you've already got clients on retainer that you're serving and new business isn't your thing, then it's more likely to be a profit metric, maybe net profit in that perspective, and in that scenario. Or maybe if you're somewhere in the middle, gross profit you kind of can't go wrong with. We obviously talk about gross profit quite a lot, and there's a few jokes about us talking about gross profit. But yeah, I think it's going to depend on what your strategic focus is. So it's going to differ from agency to agency. Next question we had was, what are the fastest growing agencies doing differently?
Okay, so there's kind of 2 answers to this question. One of them I can answer by looking at some stats that we have. So certainly when we look at how agency owners spend their time, we notice some traits amongst the fastest growing. And these are in the report, you can see them tomorrow. This only applies to £1 million plus agencies, by the way. But we notice that they spend most of their time on sales and marketing and account management, not a huge surprise. And they spend least of their time on business administration, again, not a huge surprise. But what's interesting, the third thing we noticed was growth came at a cost. So twice as many fast growth agency leaders admitted that they didn't have a healthy work-life balance. So please be careful with that. So that's how they spend their time. In terms of a trait, again, we cover this in a report coming out later this year, but just to give you one of the headlines from that report, just to give you a head start. The big trait to help you build a business that will absolutely thrive is to make sure that you specialize. Either specialize in what you do or who you do it for, or ideally, both of those things. Because every agency that does that, and we asked you you remember those who did the survey, how well do you currently specialize? We took that data and we analyzed performance. The ones that specialize the most outperform those that just do general stuff. And in a competitive environment that we find ourselves in, by the way, the number one challenge for agency owners at the moment is winning new business. In a competitive environment, people don't want to work with generalists. They want to work with specialists. People don't pay premium fees to work with generalists. They pay premium fees to work with specialists. And so that is what is the journey that we need to continue on. And later in the year, I'll explain a little bit more about what that journey looks like, because there's always the next level. There's always the next level. So yeah, those are some of the traits of how they spend their time, but get specialized or increase your specialism. It will really make a difference.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think one of the benefits you get from specializing and niching in terms of, right, what do I do and who do I do it for, it actually makes new business significantly easier. Knowing that this is our ideal client, these are the guys that we sell to and that we want to get in front of, like, makes everything easier. Networking events being a great example. Like, where do I start? Right, I just want to go and hang out with business owners. Actually being able to say, right, there's this event going on for this sector, and that's the exact sector we're selling into. I'm going to try and waggle my way in there. That, you're then in a room of people that are your ideal clients. So it makes everything easier if you can specialize and niche as much as possible. Right, next up, why are you releasing 3 reports this year?
It's just a volume of information. There is a 40-page report landing in your inbox tomorrow and 2 25-page reports. And I know you're capable of reading 90 pages all in one go, but we grouped it in this way because there's certain things that we spotted in the data that we wanted to give proper airtime to and really give you a chance to take action on it. Just chucking 90 pages of stats at you, I don't think would be as impactful. So we're spreading the releases out. You know, I've hinted at some of the key headlines from the other reports. I've not deprived you of those, but the real detail, this gives us the opportunity to go into that detail and to run, you know, for each report that we release, there's a webinar that we'll run on it. There'll be an agency bite session off the back of it as well. And that allows us to go into a level of granular detail that really makes a difference. So that's the reason for it. There's just too much stuff.
Next question. Are salaries at the current level of inflation a bubble or here to stay? Will there be a salary correction in your opinion?
Well, I think the clue is when you look at the challenges that agencies are facing, and historically it's always been winning new business. And for the first time ever, that wasn't the case last year. It was recruitment was the number one challenge. And I think that drove a lot of the agency inflation we saw, along with the fact that, you know, inflation out there in the real world was at 10% as well. Now, the predictions are that inflation in the real world will reduce. Certainly, the feeling amongst agency owners, well, not the feeling, I can see in the stats, you know, recruitment and retention is not as big a deal as it was 12 months ago. So I think the easing of the inflationary pressures out in the real world, combined with the fact that actually there's not the same pressure to go and hire people, I think will make a difference. So I'm expecting it to be short-lived and we can get back to something more normal. But who knows, right? I was chatting to someone earlier, Domenica, and we said, you know, maybe this is the new normal, the ups and downs. We both agreed that we'd quite like to just have it like the old days where not much happened. But I think the reality is that we're living in a world where there's something going to happen and we need to make sure we're in the best possible shape to deal with that.
And I'd also say last year, some of you will know, a lot of you will know that we released a specific BenchPress report around recruitment and retention benchmarks. And within that report, we talked about the 7 things candidates are looking for beyond just a salary, effectively. I'm sorry to disappoint, I don't know those 7 things off the top of my head. But you can still go and download that report. We didn't do that again this year because we like to keep it fresh and mix it up. But there's some genuinely really interesting things in there. So if you are conscious that actually some people that are coming to you and candidates that you'd love to hire have got salary expectations that are beyond what ideally you'd be paying, there are things you can be doing to attract that talent and still get them in your business. There are other things people are looking for. It's not just salaries. So 100% check out that report if you're in that boat.
We linked to it at page 10. We linked to that exact bit that Roy's talking about on page 10 of this year's report, so it's easy to find.
Cool. How do I know what I should be charging to allow enough profit?
Well, you can start with that 50% in mind, right? That's a really good place to start. Look at your cost base in terms of the wages that you charge, and then you can work out the hourly rates based on the hours that you have, and the salaries of all your team. And there's spreadsheets that will help with this as well, so you can line up all your team members and the salaries that they have, and then look at the percentage of time they have chargeable and do it as a complex way. But really, and you'll see when it comes to the report later in the year, hourly charging by the hour will only get you so far. And actually what we really need to be focused on is the value that we add and charging based on value. And that's easier said than done, but there's some really simple things that we can do, like the specialization, like focusing on bigger clients with bigger budgets. Typically, those are the ones that, well, first of all, if you're focusing on a bigger client, the value that you're going to add is likely to be bigger, and therefore you're able to charge a premium price. The other thing I challenge you all on is how you can become the best in the world at something. Really niche in and become the best in the world, because then if you are the only person that does what you do, then you can charge what you want. So hourly rates will only get you so far, and you should definitely make sure the hourly rates that you are charging are hitting that 50% mark at least. But really, where it's at is focusing on value.
Mm-hmm. I heard an interesting story once, Pete talking there about bigger clients and like that being the place to go to impact on value-based pricing. And it's a really interesting sort of case study that was shared with me that stuck with me. And they're saying, if you're working with local businesses, you could have a huge impact on them and you could double their sales in the space of a year. However, they're a local small business. So the actual value that you're adding there as a sales figure, if you compare that to if you work with Coca-Cola and you make a 0.01% difference to their turnover, the value is so much greater. So that's where I would encourage people, as Pete said, working with bigger clients with bigger budgets opens up some cool opportunities. Next up, this is an interesting one. So those working 60 plus hours are more anxious. Are they more anxious because they're working 60 plus hours, or are they working 60 plus hours because they are anxious?
Well, the honest answer is we just don't know. But we can have a pretty good guess, right? And you will know yourself what it feels like to work long hours and the toll it takes on you. And very simply, I read a book a few years ago called Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. And the link between our sleep and our mental health is well documented and increasingly understood. And since reading that book, I've massively prioritized my sleep. So from what I see anecdotally, it is a little bit of both. When you're under the cosh, what's our instinct? Is to roll our sleeves up and work hard, right? And there's a lot to be said for that work ethic. However, we need to make sure that we have breaks, because you cannot do that over the long term. So if you do find yourself in a period where you are working 60 plus hours a week or giving up your weekends to get through a particular period, make sure you have an end point to that. Book yourself a week's holiday and commit to it. Pay for the accommodation, make sure you commit to it that you will go away. Because that will do two things. One, it will give you a hard stop and give you a break. But also it will give you that hope to continue through the challenging period. I spoke to lots of agency owners in COVID, but I remember one, I could just tell from talking to them, that they really needed a break. And I just said, book that time out, and they did. And what they said to me, and you'll recognize this yourself, you probably said this very same phrase yourself, I didn't realize how much I needed it. I didn't realize how much I needed it until I went out, took the break, decompressed, had a chance to reflect. And they came back, and again, we'll all be able to relate to this, hopefully. You know, those moments where we have what feels like an insurmountable challenge, and then we come back, have a break with a fresh head, and suddenly we have the solutions. We're calmer, we're more focused, we're better able to make decisions. So if you find yourself in that situation, make sure you have those hard stops and you're not doing it forever. Except there's moments, right? We all have them where we need to roll our sleeves up, but it can't last forever.
Love that. I don't want to put the pressure on, but I'm about to read out the highest voted question we've received all night. So it's from Sabrina. Thanks for submitting this. So what are the most common financial mistakes that you see from your clients' accounts? For example, where do agencies spend too much money or not invest enough?
So, can I ask you that question? Yeah. Well, the reason is I don't spend a great deal of time looking at our clients' accounts. We've got an amazing team that do that. So, okay. So I will ask you that question because I know you speak to a lot of agency owners. So the common mistakes. Do you know what? It's not engaging with the numbers. It's not engaging with the numbers that really matter, and hoping that it's going to be okay. So the fact that you're here shows that you're really interested in benchmarking, or you like a free bar. And if it's the first one, you've got a step up on the rest because you have taken time out of your day to engage with this. So you have an advantage. So it's engaging with the detail on it and ensuring that it isn't a one-off thing. So it's building in that cadence, that capability. What are the stats I look at every single week? What are the stats I look at every month? What are the stats that I look at quarterly? And building in that habit. So the biggest mistake is not getting in that habit. It's suddenly going, oh, I need to do a little bit on cash flow, and then doing a little bit and then forgetting about it. Or, Peter said, let's go and talk about gross profit. So I'll look at that for a bit. Well, don't worry, I'll always talk about gross profit, so it won't be long before I'll be talking about it again. But that's the danger, is it ebbs and flows and ebbs and flows. And actually it's saying, hang on, what are the stats that really matter to me? And as Rory said, it's going to depend on your trajectory, where you're at, the stage of your business, but nailing those down and then putting in the discipline to look at those regularly. And not just look at them, but we had this with a client. Do you remember we had a client that set a target for the number of new business conversations, but then did nothing about it when it dipped down below a certain level. Well, that's just bonkers. So it's not just setting the target, it's about setting the traffic light system around it and saying, this is what green looks like, this is what amber looks like, and this is what I do when it goes into amber. And my goodness, this is the action I take when it goes into red. So understanding that traffic light system, and then it becomes a lot more straightforward. It's just like looking at a dashboard of your car. Right, okay, this is red. This is the third week in a row it's been red. I really need to do something about this. Team, let's get together. Let's do something about it. So those would be my tips. What are your reflections?
I do think Sabrina maybe didn't bargain on the fact we're not accountants. These questions have come to the wrong people, haven't they? But
we have a team of accountants here tonight, Sabrina, if you want to chat.
Not us personally, yeah. No, I would say for me it's spending money on new business but without a real strategy is where agencies are wasting the most money. And not just money, but time as well. So actually carving out time in their diary to say, yeah, I'm going to do new business this afternoon, and then getting there to 1 o'clock and going, shit, what do I do? Like, what do I actually do now? And that's where I think having that really clear focus, going back to Pete's point that he mentioned, like number of sales conversations, having that target. Have we hit that this week? Looking at other leading indicators like LinkedIn connections or LinkedIn messages or LinkedIn conversations, or it might be speaking events, for example. That might be where you win a lot of your new business. And so set yourself a target. Do you do 2 of those a month? And that, I appreciate maybe speaking gigs is a little bit harder to impact there and then, but the point is you can still go, we've only done 1 this month. I need to get another booked in. How do I get in front of my audience? What's going on that I can try and hijack and get my foot in the door over here? Again, the LinkedIn one is a great example because any of us can do that on a Friday. If we had a target of, I don't know, it might be 150 messages a week that we want to send to people that could be good clients for us, you can see where you're up to on that. If you've only sent 100, well, you know that's the best thing I can do just to hit that leading indicator, that target for that week. So I would say where people are wasting money and wasting time is both new business related. Right, next question. I like this one. How important are programs like the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses to help agency owners with writing the plan and keeping them accountable to growth?
I think they're essential because they provide a framework. I hear really good things about the Goldman Sachs program, and there's lots of other ones out there. But what I like about those types of things is, first of all, they take you through a process. They do it in a disciplined way, and they provide accountability. And also they give you the opportunity to learn off other people. That's the power of being with your peers. So yeah, don't try and do it on your own, because it will feel like schoolwork. It will feel like a piece of homework if you're sat there going with a blank Google Doc going, crikey, where do I start with my business plan? Use one of the programs or engage with one of the brilliant mentors that are out there for agencies, and go through that structure, build that accountability. So I think, yeah, they can make a real difference.
Yeah, I think Thomas is in the room somewhere. I can't see. There you are. So I love this. Like Thomas did the 10,000 Small Business course and was raving about it. Like everyone, to be honest, that I've ever spoken to that has done it, they love it and think it's brilliant. Great plan, and you get allocated like a growth mentor or a growth advisor. I don't know the exact phrase. But what I love is Thomas, a WOW client, had a meeting a couple of weeks ago with his growth advisor from the Goldman Sachs course and his accountant at WOW. And the three of them sat around the table and bounced ideas around the table. And I just think, like, what a cool sounding board. I would say, of course, it's cool enough that you've got a WOW accountant to do that with, but if you throw in that growth advisor as well, like that's really cool. Love it. Next one. To be profitable, you have to hire the best people, but those people command high salaries, which eat into profit. How do you really reconcile those things?
So it's about value. It's always about value. So those better people do command higher salaries, but they're able to deliver much greater value. If you look at what you do, a really good exercise to do is not just measure gross profit across the whole business, but to split it up by the services that you offer. And if you really want to get granular, some people even do it by individual members of your team, and try and work out where your sweet spot is. You know, what service that you offer or what group of people within your business are actually making you the most money. So people with high salaries often are the ones delivering the highest value work, and that is your opportunity to create the biggest gap between that salary and the price that you charge. So I would embrace that. You know, from what I've seen of agencies that have been on that journey and smashed through the 50%, they all, well, think about it, it's logic, right? They all have high quality people delivering high value work. And that's a really important thing to remember. So don't be afraid of those high salaries, but be clear about how you will make money off them. In fact, be clear about how you will make money out of every individual that you have and out of every service that you have. And understand, you know, if there's certain services that aren't making any money, think very, very carefully about whether you want to continue with them. So I remember a piece of analysis we did, it was over a decade ago, with an agency. There are two parts of the business, web build and SEO. And I remember the conversation with them. They thought that there wasn't much happening in the SEO side of the business. And they used the phrase, you know, we're getting all of this revenue and it's from the web side of the business and it's keeping the lights on. When we did our analysis, yes, they had a lot more revenue from the web build, but it wasn't keeping the lights on. In fact, it was flickering them off because that part of the business was not making any money at all. All the money, all of the profit was in the SEO side. And what they did was, once they saw that, you can't unsee that stat. So they completely re-engineered their business. They said, we're only going to build your website if it results in an SEO container and retainer, and you've signed up to that beforehand. So they re-engineered their business to ensure that everything was focused on the profitable part of their business. And if you don't have that data, then you're probably you're missing a trick. You might know it anecdotally, but seeing gives you the opportunity to make some real big changes. So yeah, go and seek out that detail.
Yeah. And we're talking about value-based pricing. That's obviously the ultimate place to aim for. But beneath that, you've obviously got a lot of people that are using fixed pricing, blended rates, or tiered rates. We've always seen historically that those agencies, particularly over £1 million turnover, that have tiered rates. So just to be really clear, like different rates that they price people out at on an hourly basis based on their seniority or their position in the business, they are more profitable than those with a blended rate. And I think this is a great example of that. If you're going to invest in someone who is a senior person within your business, who is highly talented, you should be charging them out disproportionately. So if you're currently using a blended rate and then you're at that point where you're starting to take on those senior people, maybe you as the owner as well are at a point where you're going, I need to be limiting the amount of time I'm spending on client work. That is the ideal time to be implementing tiered rates. And it's quite simple, by the way. You can start just maybe with 2, and then that can become 3 and become 4. You don't have to go straight in with everyone having their own hourly rate. Right, the pressure's back on because we've got the next highest voted question.
Another one from Sabrina? Or?
It is another one from Sabrina.
Are you joking?
She's on fire, yeah. So, what would you recommend as a healthy marketing budget given the current financial climate?
Oh, it's a really good... Yeah, you're right, Sabrina. It's really good questions. So we looked at this last year in our new business benchmarks where we looked at the amount of marketing spend as a percentage of fee income. And what we discovered that once you get above 1%, so those agencies that are spending less than 1% of their fee income on sales and marketing are much less likely to grow than those that spend more than 1%. But once you get above 1%, there's not much difference beyond that. So whether you spend 3%, 5%, 10%, and again, if you go back to last year's reports, you'll be able to see exactly what this looks like. There's not much difference in performance, which tells us what we probably already know, which is it's not really what you do or how much money you spend, but kind of how you do it that matters. I know people who run brilliant events. I know people who run terrible events. I know people who do content marketing tremendously well. And I know people who do it terribly. So it's about the execution rather than the money. But as a guide, you certainly want to be above 1%. So the data says very, very clearly above 1%. You'll also see from that new business benchmarks that the top way to pick up clients doesn't cost anything at all, which is referrals. And if you go back and look at those, there's some great tips about how you can build a referral strategy into your business. And not enough of us are doing this, by the way.
Love it.
Does that include the salaries that people do in
Yeah.
the marketing?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah. It includes the salary of, it's everything. So any freelancers that you use, any external spend, and the salary of any of your sales and marketing team. Yeah.
Awesome. You're going to love this question. So, do agencies making sustainable business choices see greater or lesser profits?
So we answered this last year, and the answer is those that do, I still remember the exact headline, those that do good get better results. And we saw they did grow faster, they did make more profit. Again, there is this correlation causation question. Was it the fact that they did good mean that that they made more profit, or was it the fact they were making more profit allowed them to do more good? Again, anecdotally, we see that ensuring that your purpose plays a huge part, but building it into your proposition, into your positioning, is actually starting to become an interesting marketing tactic for agencies. Obviously, it needs to be authentic, it needs to be at the core of what you do, but telling those stories about you living your purpose, about the good that you do. There's so many agencies here that do that really, really well. I said I wasn't going to single you out, but I did last year, and you just happened to look at me at that exact moment. But Matt and the team from Platypus, go out of their way to showcase the good that you do against the UN sustainability goals. And I love that you do that. And you're not the only one. There's a case study, a couple of case studies in this year's report that we point to about agencies that are doing good and showcasing it. So yes, they do get better results. We know that empirically from the data.
Love that. We've got about 10 left, I think. but they're still coming in. So we might be here all night.
I don't know, I'm getting thirsty.
You're ready for a beer, aren't you? So there's an interesting question here. How would you define a proper written plan? I need to write one.
Well, I think it's more than just a set of objectives, and it's the how, I guess, that I'm really interested in. So first of all, being clear on where you're heading with your vision, the values of your business, and then, so I'm a really big fan of looking 3 years in advance. You know, it's far enough away from the day-to-day that allows you to dream a little bit, but it's also close enough in that it's, you know, it's 12 quarters away, so you better do something about it now, because you've got to take action in order to get there. So I love creating that 3-year vision, and then breaking that down, and then working out what you're going to change. You know, what are the things that are wildly important that you're going to impact this quarter? And it's the how that really makes the difference. A lot of us just have objectives, but don't really think about what we're actually going to change and what's going to move the needle. Because there's lots of things that you can do and that we are doing, but what's going to really make the difference? Like that's the challenge for us all as leaders, is to cut away all of the nonsense and go, well, that thing, that hire, or me spending half a day every week doing that, or focusing on this over here, that's what makes the biggest difference. And if you can do that not just for yourself, but for all of your team, and cascade this business plan down through your team, and so they are all aligned with it as well, that's when the real magic happens. So this isn't just a document that you share maybe with your business partners or your advisors. This is a team that the team have, this is a document that the team have contributed to. You know, they've got their fingerprints all over it. They've shared ideas that have helped build this plan, and there's a great book that talks about how to do this. It's called Reinventing Organizations by Frederick Laloux, and it talks about moving away from this top-down hierarchy into more self-managing teams and engaging those teams in the business planning process. I encourage you to take a look at it. So what that looks like, yeah, it's more than just a set of objectives. It involves your team. It shows you the how, and then it's broken down, crucially, into not just what you're going to do over the 12 quarters, but what you're going to do this month, and what you're going to do this week, and what you're going to do tomorrow. You know, that's the key. Get started. Do something tomorrow. Take that first step. It builds momentum, and you can roll with that. You move on from there.
Yeah. There's a good question here. So how do I find the headspace to work more on the business and strategy rather than caught up in the delivery of client work?
It's a really good question, and because this is hard. We know it's a challenge. 4 out of 5 of us want to spend more time on strategy. Too busy working in the business rather than on it is a key challenge. I think it's top 3 for agency owners this year, just after winning new business and profitability. So how do you do it? Put it in first. Put that time in first, and build your week around it. It sounds ever so simple, and I know it's a lot easier said than done, but that's the answer. That's the only answer. Put that time in first and build your week around it. So rather than plowing into Monday morning with maybe usual team meetings, why not start the week with strategy time and start your team meetings at lunchtime on a Monday? Or maybe, you know, if that's making you twitch a little bit, well, make sure you start your Tuesday with it, but make sure you start the day with it, because trying to finish the day with it isn't going to happen. Build it in, put it in first, and do not move it. You wouldn't move a client meeting. You wouldn't move an important client meeting or a meeting with a prospect. So why move strategy time? Give it the importance it deserves. You told us in the results that this was important to you, so give it that level of importance, put it in first, and don't move it. And the key to that is accountability. If you want to spend more time working on your business, look, it's accountability. This is what it comes down to. If you don't do it and you're on your own and no one knows you've not done it, we're really quite happy letting ourselves down. No problem. But we don't like letting other people down. And whether that's a paid coach, or whether that's, you know, your business partner or your leadership team or your accountant, we don't like letting other people down. And so use that little bit of our human nature to your advantage.
Yeah, we've got a client that I think they've got a bit of a win-win here, because they get the strategy time, but they also get a few lovely days because they go and book an Airbnb somewhere usually in the country, but sometimes outside of the country, and they commit those 2 or 3 days where they've got a completely different environment as well. And I think that is really important. If you're in that same room at home as you always are, or if you're in that same boardroom as you have all your meetings with, it's very difficult to get back from the business. I think especially if the phone's ringing and you can hear the team hustling away in the background, like actually if you can just get away with your business partner and go and focus and think, right, we're going to think longer term in the business here and we've got these days carved out, I think that can work really well. And it goes back to what Pete said as well, you know, Fantasia, Dan, Katie, all lead advisors at WOW here in the room today, and they love doing this sort of thing. You know, actually that accountability piece, you know, to be able to say, right, what are we going to do in the next 3 months? Actually, what are the things we want to go and implement in the business? And we're going to catch up with you again next quarter. How have you got on against those? Like, I think if you don't have ideally a business partner that you can do that with, then there's plenty of options. Right, we're going to cherry pick a few because since we're all ready for the bar. So I've got a good question here. What split do you typically see between recurring revenue versus ad hoc and project revenue? Is there any correlation with agency profitability and growth?
We shared these stats, I think last year. I can't remember them off the top of my head. And the reason I can't remember them is because there's no correlation, because otherwise I would have remembered it. No correlation to growth or profitability, but what I would say, the reason why I think something like 3/4 of agency owners would like more retainers is because of the predictability that gives you. And so, you know, you can have unprofitable retainers and you can have profitable ones, but it's the predictability that's important because that allows you to take a longer term view with your planning, with your hiring, with all the decisions in your business. So I would encourage you to find ways to increase those retainers, but also make sure they're profitable. The danger with retainers, of course, that maybe you don't get quite so much with project work is, with project work you get a chance to re-quote for it and learn from your experiences. The danger with retainers is you just stick on that level, and if you do have a retainer model in your business, make sure you have those annual reviews. Well, probably more often than annual actually, where you're looking at what you're delivering, what the client needs, and crucially the price that you're charging, and making sure all of those things match up, and you don't sleepwalk into the situation where you've got a 5-year-old retainer on really, well, rates that were good back then, but are certainly not good now. So, yeah, whichever model you choose, it's incumbent upon us to make sure it's a profitable one.
And just to add to that final quick thing, if you have got that monthly recurring revenue and you've got these retainers, if you can get them on a direct debit, like even better. So not only can you guarantee you've got that income coming in, you're also in a little bit better control of your cash flow, knowing that money's coming in, when is it going to hit your account. More and more agencies these days are doing this. More and more clients are receptive to that conversation. So it gives you much greater control over your cash flow.
Yeah, really good tip. A lot of you will be familiar with Go Cardless. It's a really good tool for you to use to do that. You're never going to get a big blue chip brand signing up to a direct debit. We know that. But if you don't ask, you don't get. And I'd encourage you to ask some of those smaller clients that you work with.
Right, we're going to wrap it up there. There was a bunch of questions we've just not been able to get to. We'd be here all night, but the bar is calling our name, all of us. So any questions that haven't been answered, give us a shout, give me a shout, and I'll make sure we get an answer to those. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Cheers, folks.